I love demonform, and so for my 10,000 subscriber specials, I'm bringing it back. This time featuring some of the best tech in PoE 2 to take it even further. This is demonform, an Ascendancy skills from the Infernalist, and now with Cast on Ignite loop added to the build, it is way better, and we are talking lower stack needed to melt Pinnacle Bosses, relatively tanky while still keeping that high risk, high reward playstyle, and most importantly, it's way more fun in my opinion, so let's get right into it. First up, shout out to Duff, where he explained and tested the Cast on Ignite loop in detail, which is where I first learned about it. After seeing how it works, I knew I had to adopt it for demonform. The concept behind an Ignite loop is simple but is powerful, and here's how it works. We use Burning Inscription support on a curse to apply ignited ground. The enemies that step onto the ground get ignited, which generates energies for our Cast on Ignite setup. We are running 2 Cast on Ignite skills, and on one of them, we link Essence Drains with Drain Ailment. This setup removes ignites from enemies, but because they are still standing on the ignited ground, the ignited keep getting reapplied instantly, fueling even more energies for our Cast on Ignite cast. It's a self-sustaining loop where ignite triggers the cast trigger and remove the ignite, and then the ignite reapplies and rise and repeat. That is the core of the Cast on Ignite loop. So you might be wondering, if you can do this on any characters, why would you go with demonform? Well, demonform has a huge advantage, is that it gives demon flame stacks, and these stacks give us a tons of free damage over time in the form of spell damage. Burning Inscriptions apply ignited ground, and this scales with spell damage and ignite magnitude. Since we naturally get a lot of spell damage for free, this means we'll generate much more energies for Cast on Ignite the more demon flame stacks that we have. The more stacks mean more energies, and more energies mean more casts, and that's why demonform and ignited loop work perfectly together, and both get stronger over time with more demon flame stacks. As strong as the Cast on Ignite loop is, when it comes to our build, it's a trade-off. So our gear doesn't give us a lot of spirits, and to make the loop work, we'll need to drop Blasphemy, which was our main defensive layer. Instead, we are introducing 2 Cast on Ignite setup with Elemental Invocation into the build. Now, the second Cast on Ignite spell, we are using Comets, because let's be honest, it's the hardest hitting spell in PoE 2, and Elemental Invocation, this is going to be our new defensive layer, and it's a game changer. So how Elemental Invocation works is that it gains energies whenever we ignited enemies, and that means in an ignited loop we are constantly getting the energies required for it, which means we can constantly triggering it. It counts as you invoking a spell, so with invocated efficiencies we recover 3% of our mana every single time it triggers. This keeps our mana full at all times, which is crucial since we are a glass cannon running Mind over Matter. Of course, this is not perfect, so if you are not constantly invoking the spell, you are vulnerable, which is why in this variant of the build, you are also 100% needed to have Melting Maelstrom to avoid getting instantly deleted during downtime. So let's break it down on how do we actually do damage. The key to demonform is the high risk, high reward playstyle, and the more demon flame stacks we build, the more insane our damage will get. Around 2 minutes in a map, roughly 120 stacks, this build will melt everything in sight. But unlike the usual slow ramp demonform, we actually hit way harder in the early stacks thanks to the Cast on Ignite loop, so even at lower stacks you can still fight back because the rare monster will naturally give a lot more energies, letting us keep the loop going pretty smooth. Now to actually kill stuff, you want to cast Flammability on Monster Pack to fuel the Ignite loop. Ignited Ground and Impending Doom will keep the damage going, and the Comet's procs from Cast on Ignite will delete enemies. To make the build actually feels good for mapping though, you want to sustain at least 300 to 400 Demon Flame stacks, since some of the maps will take longer to complete. And with that, we can talk about something just as important, and that is how to get the highest life regeneration possible in my setup. First, let's go over the jewel choice for this build because they play a big role in making everything work. The most important jewel in our setups is going to be a From Nothing diamond. This jewel is essential because it lets you allocate passive nodes without needing to connect them on your trees. This means you can grab an unwavering stance or bulwark roll on the diamonds and immediately get access to Hail Heart along with the 4 small life regeneration nodes around it. One thing to keep in mind, the life recovery rate is different from life regeneration rate and they multiply with each other, making this a must-have for sustains. The next jewel is going to be a Sapphire Jewels, and it's still useful for mana sustain. I'm running 1 Sapphire Jewel with the recover 2% mana on kill, and it is still very good. On top of this, you'll want to look for a high maximum energy shields roll because that will translate to more life regeneration thanks to our helmet. For all the other jewel slots, ruby jewels are the way to go because you want to prioritize getting high life regeneration rates. On the jewels, it can roll up to 15%, so try to aim for high roll. You can also get magnitude or ignite you inflict, and this one can be lower but it's still very useful, and try to get the ruby jewels with both of these modifier. Finally, my last jewel is a megalomaniac with impending doom allocated. These speed up the curse activation, making it a solid quality of life boost to our attacks. And yeah, that's the jewel setups. Make sure you get high life regen roll and high magnitude of ignite you inflict, and you should be good to go. So to run the setups, you'll need at least 180 spirits, which can be tricky because first, we don't use weapon, which is usually provide us spirits. We rely on a lot of unique items, limiting our access to spirit rolls. So how do we reach 80 additional spirits? There's really only 2 sources for spirits on your gear. The first one is a corrupted Mask of the Stitch Demon with a 20 to 30 spirit roll on the corrupted enchantment. And for your amulet, you can get up to 60 spirit on there. And you can also spec into Bedad's Will as well for some additional spirits, but I wouldn't recommend that because you would increase your maximum life, which work a little bit against you getting higher stacks. Aside from spirits, your amulet should also have higher maximum mana, since mana is our main defensive layer, strong life regeneration roll, ideally close to mine, no shrink or maximum life. These actually is really bad because it increases your maximum life, right? So you take more damage from Demon Flame stacks, so you don't want it anywhere in the build. The Mask of the Stitch Demon is a core defensive item in our build. This unique helmet provides life regeneration per maximum energy shields, which is why we stack as much energy shields as possible. It is the single most important piece of gear that enable our sustain. Ideally, for your body armor, you want to get one with a corrupted 61% to maximum life convert to energy shields, like I do have here. And this is good because lower maximum life means that you take less damage per Demon Flame stacks. You gain more energy shields, which increase your total life regeneration. It is a really strong corruption that is essential for our sustain. On your main heart, use the Life Catalyst to get the reduced maximum life roll up to 24%. And against lower life mean taking less damage per Demon Flame stacks. And while this ring does reduce global defense, which affect the ES, the life reduction is much more beneficial for us, so I recommend running at least 1 main heart for optimal sustain. For our glove, we can't get the life regeneration roll, so we are going to prioritize getting dexterity because we actually need dexterity for the elemental invocation spell. Then we're going to get elemental resistance to help cap resistance, maximum mana again for better defense, and as much energy shield as possible to further boost the life regens. Now for our boots, I opted for double energy shields roll, maximum mana, elemental resistance, and life regenerations. I don't go for movement speed on the boots because I feel like we are pretty fast in demon form with the demon dodge roll already, so we don't really need it. The movement speed make the dodge roll go faster but not technically further, so it's a personal choice for this. On both our belt and ring, you should prioritize getting maximum mana, elemental resistance, and life regenerations. And yeah, that should pretty much be it. We are running a lot of unique items and they actually provide chaos resistance. So this build is actually easy to cap elemental resistance with chaos resistance in all the gear slots. I am running a thawing charm to help prevent freezing, which is critical because freezings mean death in map pretty much. And like I mentioned before, Melting Maelstrom is absolutely mandatory, and if you don't have this, you'll risk dying a lot because you will need to ramp up the loop to sustain mana. In general, this flask is just amazing for Mind Over Matter build, and you absolutely need this. The flask rule doesn't matter, just try to grab the cheapest one available on the market. Now let's get to our skill setups. And the foundation of the build again revolve around triggering Ignite consistently to sustain our cast on Ignite loot. Our main Ignite triggers come from flammability and support with Curse Ground and Burning Inscriptions. Every time we cast Flammability Curse, it leaves behind an ignited ground that lasts 4 seconds. Enemies standing on the ignited ground will continuously be ignited, getting us constant energies for our cast on Ignite loops once the Essence Rain start draining the Ignite. Additionally, we use Impending Doom, which triggered Doom Blast whenever our Flammability Curse expire, adding additional burst damage and improving clear speeds. Spell Cascade extends the coverage of our Curse Ground to make sure more monsters get ignited, and Shearing Flame grants a massive 75% more Ignite magnitude, which means higher Ignite damage and more energies for cast on Ignite and elemental invocations. For our first cast on Ignite, we are using Essence Rains as our primary cast on Ignite spell because it works with Drain Ailment, allowing us to continuously peel Ignite off enemies. To maximize the number of enemies hit, we'll support it with Fork and Chain to ensure that Essence Rain spreads and affects as many enemies as possible per cast. Impetus is there to help with the energy gain to cast more frequently, and for the second cast on Ignite, we'll be using Comet as the main damage dealer because it's the strongest cast on Ignite spell in PoE 2, and we'll support it with Concentrated Effect for 40% more area damage, Spell Echoes as it gives double cast for more hits per second, Rising Tempest because it's a massive 36% more damage multiplier since we are constantly using elemental invocations, which counts as fire, cold, and lightning damage. Inspiration is there to help reduce the mana cost of Comet, which is important because we cast so frequently. For mapping, I use a level 11 Comet, which is the minimum level of the gems to save and sustain our mana, and I would not recommend you to go higher than level 11 for mapping. For Pinnacle Bosses, you can swap to the highest level of Comet that you have for maximum damage and spam Melting Maelstrom Flask to keep your mana full. For boss fight, we use Eye of Winter with Unleash support to cast double Eye of Winter, and with Withering Touch, we can quickly apply 10 Wither stacks and boost our chaos damage taken by the boss. And why Wither, you ask? Because thanks to Ming's Heart, we convert a lot of our damage to chaos as extra damage, meaning that Wither stacks actually increase our total damage, and it also boosts our crit chance, making all of our spells and Comet hits a lot harder. Bolt Lightning and Lightning Warps are there to apply the shock round, which will inflict the shock debuff on the boss and further increase your damage. You can cast Bolt Lightning and then use Lightning Warp on top of the Bolt Lightning, and wherever you cast your Lightning Warp, you will create a shock round. For the support gems, you can use whatever gems I list on the screen here for utilities. Once you hit level 90, you can run a 5-link Infernal Hound for extra Ignite support. I like to run Fire Exposures, Wildfire, and Stripped Away to pretty much spread the fire and also inflict a lot of fire exposures. Last Gaps and Elemental Army is there to help with the Hound's survivability, although in practice it dies pretty often. Elemental Invocation is critical for sustaining our mana while also boosting our damage. Every time we cast Elemental Invocations, we recover 3% of our maximum mana, and once we ramp up, we can easily keep our mana full at all time in combat. We use Ember Fusillade because it has the lowest cast time, making it the best option because Elemental Invocation consumes 10 energy per 0.1 second of base cast time. For the support gems, we are using Arcane Temple to lower the cast times, Capacitors and Energy Retentions to ensure the consistent uptime on invocations, and that's pretty much it. Here's a neat trick though, if you're playing on PC, you can actually autocast Elemental Invocation using the numlock trick. First, you need to bind Elemental Invocation to a numpad key, and then you would hold that key down and then turn off numlock, and the game will think that you are constantly pressing the key, making it auto-cast whenever the spell is available. Our Ascendancy's path is fairly straightforward. Demonic Possessions is the core Ascendancies that enable demonform, making it the first pick for the build. Since our build easily cap chaos resistance by taking Altar Flesh, the Ascendancy points allow us to convert 20% of physical damage taken into chaos damage, making us a lot tankier against physical damage. The third Ascendancy is going to be the Loyal Hellhound, and it gives us 20% damage reductions from hits, which is a pretty good defensive boost. Additionally, it gives Ignite and Fire exposure support with our gem setups, and synergize pretty well with our Ignite-based damage scaling. And finally, to optimize the Demon Flame stacks, we actually avoid pathing through nodes that grant increased maximum life, like these nodes. This is because higher maximum life mean higher self-damage, you already know. So instead, I'm opting to take the two small nodes that gives plus 4% increased maximum mana, which help with our mana pool, and the 12% increased critical strike chance, which improve overall damage output by a little bit. The passive skill trees is also fairly optimized, and I think it's quite straightforward as well. We want as much mana node as possible, and we want as much energy shields on the passive skill trees as possible, because energy shields is life regens, and with more energy shields, we're going to get more stacks. We are also running elemental invocations, which mean you need to run a few dexterity. So if you're lacking dexterity, if you don't have enough dexterity on the glove, then you want to click some of these attribute nodes to be dexterity, and also run a lower elemental invocations. Skill gems would help. Beside that, we are taking all these nodes that increase the meta skills, gain energies, and then invocate efficiencies, because we are running 2 casts on Ignite, and then we want to loop and cast more spell. And then we're also running elemental invocations, and this node recover mana, so this is a very important node to take. If you are using From Nothing Diamond, which, like I mentioned before, it is very important to our build, make sure that when you socket in the From Nothing Diamond jewel, you also go all the way down here and allocate all these nodes. So you have to actually click and allocate these nodes to be able to get the effect from it. If you are just socketing these jewels and you are not allocating these nodes, you are not going to get Hail Hard and all these effects down here. So it's very important. Beside that, we are Might Over Matters and Outreach Battery. And so that is our main layer defense. And I am not using Heavy Frost or Thin Ice over here, because whenever our comets drop down and we freeze an enemy, the Drain Ailment actually going to peel up the freeze as well. So if you want more damage for your comets, you want to path up here and grab Delatiations for the cold penetrations, and +1 to all level of cold skills. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the skill trees. Overall, I think this is fairly optimized already, and yeah, conservative casting is fairly important as well. You want to cast a lot of comets, so reduce the mana cost will make it more comfortable while mapping. This build is the definitions of high risk, high reward, and you will be constantly dodging in demon form dodge roll, weaving in flammability cast to keep the ignite loop running. If you enjoyed melting bosses with insane scalings, glass cannon playstyle, you're going to love this build as much as I do. I have updated my full written guide on mobalytics, so be sure to check it out for all the details. I'm also providing a full POB with the link in the descriptions for anyone looking for it. This build is incredible for farming the Trial of Sekima as well. You benefit massively for all the boons, making it possible to ramp up to 600 stacks and absolutely destroy Xerox just like this. Hitting 10,000 subscribers is a huge milestone for me, and I truly appreciate all your support. If you have any questions, drop a comment down below and I'll do my best to respond. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.